Well, in looking at the news today, I am overwhelmed by the weight of abandonment that has been hanging over America for the last 4 years. And next hour, I'm going to talk to you about it. It's been going on for a lot longer than that, and it's an end of an era. This is an end of an era and the beginning of a new one, and I'll explain. But there is a shadow that was cast by Joe Biden that we all started to feel was inevitable. It was a presidency that turned its back on those it swore to protect. And the evidence is a little overwhelming, undeniable. Yesterday, one of the astronauts that has been marooned, think of that word, only used to hear that on Gilligan's Island. They're marooned on the International Space Station. What he said yesterday, this astronaut, is basically this. Joe Biden rejected Elon Musk's offer to bring him and his marooned astronauts home, not for strategy, not for principle, but for petty politics. Biden feared the optics, the chance that it might make Donald Trump look really, really good and him bad. So he didn't do it. So 2 Americans languished in orbit, symbols of a nation that once reached for the stars, now just content to let them drift in space. It's obscene. But this, unfortunately, wasn't an isolated failure. Afghanistan comes to mind. The withdrawal in 2021, how many thousands were left behind? Do you know we're still in Afghanistan, Mercury 1? We're trying to get out of there, but there's like 100 people left. We're trying to get out that we promised we would. And because of the Taliban, because it's going to change now, but because of the State Department and Biden, we've never been able to get them out. We left interpreters, allies, families who risked everything to aid our troop. And yet we let the terrorists come across our border. The Biden administration, they abandoned people and left them to the mercy of the Taliban. We all felt it when that happened. That week was one of the darkest weeks in my history of being an American, of living here and seeing it and going, that's not us. It was the fall of Saigon in 1975. We airlifted people out that we could, and then we just left a whole bunch of people to go into either a re-education camp or face a death squad. You know who didn't forget the people? Biden forgot the people in Afghanistan. You know who didn't? You know who sent in the planes and brave men and women to go in behind enemy lines and rescue them? You did. Just as a single American, you did. History has taught the world over and over again the cost of deserting people. And yet Biden repeated it over and over again, ignoring the pleas of those who trusted us or who carried a blue passport. What about the Abbey Gate? Abbey Gate, 13 Americans, service members for America, died in that suicide bombing during that same week we abandoned people. Biden never pursued the mastermind. He never even acknowledged the sacrifice in his public tallies of the war's toll. Never. Their names faded into silence, unavenged, unrecognized, unremembered by a White House too busy to scrambling around to save face. And the pattern repeats. After Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel, guess what? Americans were left stranded, scrambling for evacuation as the State Department faltered. And yet who was there? You were. The tales from Mercury 1 of the people that went in to help save and rescue Americans is just phenomenal. You sent planes over to rescue the trapped. In Haiti, under Biden, chaos erupted. 2024, U.S. citizens, thousands of them trapped. No real rescue mounted by the U.S. State Department or our government. Yet again, You sent in the planes. Let's look at the abandonment of East Palestine or Palestine. How do you say it, Palestine? I can't remember now. It's you remember anyway. In Ohio, you all Palestine. You remember when the train spewed all of that gas into the air, and yet Biden never came there. He never rallied his administration to cut through the red tape to stop the suffocation of that small town in Ohio. North Carolina drowned under Hurricane Helene's wrath just last September. President said, we've done all we can. Leaving communities and families and people, individuals trapped on mountaintops or to claw their way out of the mud. Yet again, you showed up to do the right thing, and you did it not for glory, not for fame, not for politics, not for headlines, but because it was the right thing to do, the American thing to do. These were not oversights. They were choices by this administration, a consistent refusal to prioritize the vulnerable, the forgotten, the American. Things have changed. Have you noticed that? Now Donald Trump is in office. Some real big things have really changed. Take the Abbey Gate mastermind. Trump announced that he was captured and brought to U.S. soil 2 days ago. 2 days ago. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz revealed Trump's team went, got him, and extracted a confession before even landing in Dulles, delivering accountability when Biden offered none. The Gold Star families, one of whom cried out in anguish during the 2024 State of the Union. Remember, Biden had that guy removed. He had that guy removed who was just crying out and saying, "Justice, say my son's name. You cannot just say that nobody was killed. 13 of our children were killed." Well, this week they finally saw their pain recognized. And their children and their deaths honored. Not with words, but with action. And then Trump did it again yesterday. I don't know if you saw this. Yesterday, he made his position on the hostages in Israel super clear. Quote, "Not a single Hamas member will be safe until you release every hostage." Pretty clear. And yet, just in the first 6 weeks of this guy's term, Donald Trump personally secured 11 total confirmed hostages. These were poor Americans being held in some of the most hostile, nasty areas of the world. Gaza, Russia, Venezuela. And you know what? None of these were grand gestures for applause. None of them. They were just smart and decent moves to bring Americans home. What the hell is your passport or you being an American worth if somebody can just scoop you up? Biden's tenure saw 1,000 Afghans with special immigrant visas left behind. Per the State Department's estimate, alongside with hundreds of Americans unrescued from the conflict zones like Israel and Haiti. Trump's first term, by comparison, he's freed over a dozen high-profile detainees, Americans like Joshua Holt from Venezuela, the pastor Andrew Brunson from Turkey the same year. Relentless negotiation, relentless pursuit of what is true and right. Where Biden just dithered and withered, Trump leaned in, often personally leaning in. Like when he met with Kim Jong-un in 2018. You know, I don't know if you remember this. He secured the release of 3 American hostages from North Korea. It's the intent. It is the willingness to act. I'm a little soupy today because honor is coming back. And it's not about chest-thumping nationalism. This is about duty. This is about a covenant between a government and its people that are rooted in ethics and responsibility. It's about a duty, a covenant between a government and its people. Franklin Roosevelt, when he launched the Doolittle raid in 1942, he knew that covenant that we made. He didn't abandon the downed pilots. He ordered rescue missions deep into enemy territory. When Jimmy Carter fumbled the Iran hostage crisis in 1980, he at least tried. It was flawed. Desert One was an abysmal failure, but Biden didn't even try. He withdrew. He deflected. He excused. His era was one of shame. Not just of what he did, but he shamed us for being somebody who believed in these ethics, in the American way, in the American responsibility. Shame. Not because America lacked the power or the willpower. He left us a legacy of shame because he lacked the will. We watched as our own were left to fend for themselves, as their lives were like bargaining chips that were just too costly to play. I can't play that. I get bad headlines. Man, it feels good to be able to say that that era ends now. It's over. Trump's return signals a shift, and it's not blind jingoistic pride. It's a renewed clarity of purpose. The capture of the killer at Abbey Gate, it's not just a win for justice. It's a message to the world. We are not going to leave our citizens, our people, behind. And if you kill any of our people, we will hunt you down and justice will be served. The parents of those lost at Abbey Gate? Sorry, that one is very personal. The citizens that have been stranded in countries all over the world, the American towns and citizens that were ignored, you're not a footnote anymore. You're the priority. And it's not about one man's ego. This is about a people waking up, remembering that strength lies in protecting the least among us, not in PR stunts or political gamesmanship. None of that matters. And if you don't get it yet, let me just tell you, let me say the unspoken truth that so many haven't grasped yet. Biden's abandonment wasn't incompetence. It was a worldview. It was a belief that America's role was now to retreat, to manage decline. We didn't lead anymore. We didn't deserve to lead anymore. He saw our reach as an overextension, our rescues as a liability. Trump, no matter what you think of him, sees very differently. Every American left behind is a wound to our soul. It's a debt unpaid. That's why he pursued the mastermind. That's why he fought for the jailed. That's why he's vowed to rebuild whatever was neglected. It's not about glory. It's not about him. It's about honor. A concept that America under Biden and the last 20 years has just been left to atrophy. But let me tell you right now, the era of shame is over. We're recommitting to the hard work of being a nation that actually stands by its own. From the astronauts above to the families below, from Kabul to Ohio, a promise is being rewritten again. No American gets left behind. That's the America that I've always believed in. That's the America worth believing in. That's the America worth believing in. Again, it's not a myth. It's a renewed mission. Back in a minute. All right, I want to dive into the Supreme Court decision on restoring USA funding. I think this is grotesque, but it's a conversation that we need to have. And it doesn't end with, we're not going to listen to the Supreme Court. It leads right to, please, Donald Trump, make sure you're finding a Scalia as our next Supreme Court justice if you get to appoint one. The question is, who really holds the reins of our government? Yesterday, the Supreme Court ruling came out, and they really didn't, because it was a quick turnaround, it's not a full reading of what everybody was saying. And I want to know exactly how they made this decision. But we saw Justice Amy Coney Barrett side with John Roberts and the court's liberal wing. What a surprise there. And it was against the Trump's administration to push to freeze $2 billion, $2 billion. You and everyone you know, maybe everyone you've ever met, everybody that lives in the same town with you, will never pay $2 billion in income tax. So $2 billion in foreign aid. And the dissent came from conservative justices like Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh. Now, this was, Scalia talked a lot about this. And let me break it down in this way. The federal government is like a giant kitchen. Congress is the head chef. Okay? They write the recipes and then order all of the raw ingredients, laws, and the budgets. Got it? The president is the kitchen and manager of the chef and all of the kitchen. He decides, how do we execute this? How do we do this? And the Supreme Court is really the food inspector who's called in when there's, worry about food poisoning, botulism, something really bad that the restaurant was never supposed to put out. That's what it's supposed to be. In this case, President Trump, on his first day back in office, he signed an executive order to freeze $2 billion in USA funding. Okay, why? Because he suspects deep corruption. So the money Congress had already earmarked for foreign aid, which is their job, it gets blown out of the water. Now, his team said, let's look for waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, that comes right from his campaign promises. That's what he was elected to do. He was very clear about DOGE. The nonprofit groups sued, and a lower court judge ordered the funds to be unblocked. And in the Supreme Court yesterday, 5-4 split, they upheld that order. Now, what? The ruling said, basically, you can't just hit pause on Congress, okay? They've come up with a recipe. They've ordered all of the goods unless the law explicitly lets you, the president. Now, I think it does, but, and really, so does Thomas and Alito and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. They said, he's the administrator. He's the one. He's the one to say, no, wait. I think there may be some sort of botulism in some of these ingredients. I'm not putting them into the food. The administrator, does he have leeway to manage the funds and root out corruption? Especially since the executive branch is tasked with, quote, faithfully executing the laws. Faithfully executing the laws. Amy Coney Barrett, Trump appointee from last time, surprised a lot of people, me not so much. She didn't write a separate opinion here, but her vote suggests a real narrow view of executive power that I don't think the founders ever really saw this as. Scalia, were he alive, might have dissented and gone the way of Alito and Gorsuch because he always railed against judicial overreach. There was a court case back in the 80s, Morrison versus Olson. He warned letting courts micromanage executive discretion, I'm quoting, enfeebles the president's constitutional role. What does that mean? The president oversees his domain. Congress oversees their domain. And there can't be any judicial meddling in this unless the Constitution or Congress clearly says so. Okay, Congress allocated the funds, and no law gave Trump the unilateral freeze button. That's what she said. Here's the problem. Here's how I think of it and how I think you should think of it. Think of your family. You're running a family budget. You and your spouse, that's Congress, agree to spend $500 at a kid's summer camp, okay? But you and your wife, for some reason, are really busy, and so you hand the $500 over to your brother, the president. And you're like, I want you to pay the camp director and send him to summer camp. And then you're out. And then you find out that the brother is holding on to that $500. Of course, you're like, wait a minute. I gave you the $500 to send our kid to summer camp. And your brother says, wait a minute. The camp is way overcharging, or worse, it's a scam, or even worse, they actually stand against everything your family, you, your son, everything you tried to teach him, everything you want. I couldn't in good conscience give this $500 to them because it's corrupt. Are you cool or are you mad that I told you it had to be spent on this? Are you going, thank God, or do you say, you have no right to do that? I want my money going to that corrupt camp even if they're abusing my child. Of course not. That's the oversight of the administrator. That's this case in a nutshell. That's what Trump is arguing, and that's what Trump should be given. The problem is it's not a family of 3 or 4 or 5. It's a family of 330 million people, and the cash is yours. Do you want it to go to anti-American or changing mice, one sex to the other? Do you want that? Because I, as a family member and 330 million people, I'm kind of pissed about that. Maybe you're not. I am.
Okay, add that a little bit too, Glenn. At any point, the mom and dad can just send that money directly to the camp.
Yes.
All they have to do is, instead of doing this BS thing they're doing, which is like, here's a big pile of money and we want generally this thing to happen, they can just write in the laws that they pass exactly where the money needs to go and when it needs to go there. That is complete. They have the power. The Congress has all of this ability.
As according to the Constitution. But the progressives have changed all of that. They passed in 1946 the Administrative Procedure Act. I don't know what that is. You ever heard of that? Really super important. It creates a fourth branch of government that's neither executive or legislative. It's just kind of out there in limbo. Why? Because it dilutes the power of the president and it takes Congress out of the hot seat. They don't want to be blamed by you for something. Is anyone taking responsibility for the cash that we know is being funneled into, nefarious purposes? Nobody in Congress is being held responsible for it. Why? Because they did exactly what Stu said. We're just giving it to that agency. I don't have anything to say about the agency. I said we should send it over there because I thought they were doing this. And then if the president doesn't have the power to say, wait a minute, you're not spending that money, then you can't even blame him. Who do you blame? Who's responsible for earmarking that money to go to those specific groups? Somebody you've never met, somebody whose name you've never seen, somebody who will never go to jail or be held responsible, even if they're funneling it to nefarious camps. That's what this is really all about. And when the people truly understand that, and realize there is no check on the judicial branch. The judicial branch is supposed to just make the decisions. No, that's not in the Constitution. But instead, we've changed all of these things through law those laws are unconstitutional because they destroy the checks and balances of the three branches. But what are we going to do? We're going to be like the Democrats, just do it anyway. Nope. We say to the President of the United States right now, you let the DOJ, if they force you to spend this money, you sick the DOJ on them and you track every dollar. You find anyone who is wasting our money, anybody who is doing anything nefarious, and you march them out in an orange jumpsuit in shackles and you throw their ass in jail. And then you wait for one of these people in the Supreme Court to die of natural causes. Do you hear that, lefties? To die of natural causes. And then you find the biggest constitutional pit bull and you put them on the court. That's the way Americans handle it. Back in just a second. Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. Well, Donald Trump is expected today to issue another executive order aimed at abolishing, it's going to make you sad, the Department of Education.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, in this particular case,
you can't
just do that.
Well, the executive order
it's worded
says,
well.
Yes.
It's worded very much acknowledging that accuracy.
Quote, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Education Department based on the maximum extent appropriate and permitted by law.
Yeah.
So he's saying, look, Congress established this thing. Mm-hmm. It was an executive order on a Jimmy Carter. And then Congress went and said, no, we really like that. And so they codified it so nobody could do what he would like to do. That's fine. So now we have to work within the framework of law. But that's what this says.
Yes.
I want you to shut this thing down as tight as you possibly can according to law and that it's appropriate.
What did they codify? Was it in the 90s? Wasn't it like late? It was much later than I remember thinking.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I have to look that up. But because, I mean, Reagan could have.
Yeah, he could have. He didn't.
Did it that way. And he was a strong opponent and ran on it. Yeah. And I don't know if he just felt like, who knows? I'd have to go back and revisit that period.
For this president, every president has been taught to pick your battles.
Yeah.
Don't do all of them.
That's true. Trump is like, I want all the battles.
He's like, he doesn't care. He does not care. He's just taking all of the battles on, which I love.
And, I don't know. You know Trump better than I do. I mean, you've obviously spent a decent amount of time with the guy over the years. But, is his theory here, is he the type of thinker where he's saying, you know what? It's a different era. Mm-hmm. And people don't remember a lot of stuff. And some of the stuff probably will be unpopular. And I think it's important. I'm going to do it anyway. And by the time accountability is there, where voters are voting, they're going to be on 25 different things by then. Let's get it all done right now. Is that part of his thinking?
I think maybe part of his thinking. I think that part of his thinking also is if I move fast enough. See, him cutting all of these things from USAID, and I mean, it's the reason why he did that big monologue in the middle of his speech the other day.
Yeah.
We're doing this with your money, we're doing this with your money, we're doing this. And notice it was a funny part, so it was entertaining. It was something that would connect with everybody. Mm-hmm. That's to just keep hammering home your money is being wasted in just ridiculous and unethical and maybe even illegal ways. When he gets to the place to where he goes after and finds out what Stacey Abrams was doing with that $2 billion, and he starts putting people in orange jumpsuits, that's when it's going to solidify and everything will start to come down. He's just building, he's moving forward. Everybody's kept busy on so many fires, and he's building a case for the big ones every single day.
Yeah.
I think he's broken this up into phases. You're only seeing phase 1. When he hits phase 2, this is a guess. When he hits phase 2 of this, I think it's going to be breathtaking.
This was the sleepy time?
He's got 100 days. He's 40 into it. And he's not going to slow down. He's going to get faster. It's a thing to behold. And today we'll see what his executive order says, assuming he signs it today. But shutting down the Department of Education in every possible legal way.
This is Glenn Beck.